Hi, Denise.
Hi.
Thank you so much for coming and sharing some time with us and being a part of the C19 experience.
Well, thank you for having me.
Yes. So I would love to talk to you a little bit about a lot of things.
Okay.
But first, I want to talk to you about life before COVID, and then like what it was like when COVID came in. Now, we as sort of lay people, we have always in some way put healthcare workers like on a pedestal, right? They know more about these things than we know. But when COVID came, there was no training on COVID, I'm sure, before it came. So what was it like transitioning into the COVID world?
Well, pre-COVID.
Yeah.
Pre-COVID, I would say that working in the emergency room was can I say whatever I want?
Yeah.
So it was very much like ER.
Yeah.
But there was not as much sex. I kept going into the closets. They were empty.
No one was in there.
No, it's hard work.
Jeez.
There's long hours.
Yeah.
There's no eating. There's
Yeah.
no potty breaks. There's a lot of happiness with your staff because you all have kind of this raunchy personality, sense of humor.
Yes.
Because that's your armor when you work in the emergency department. Mm-hmm. You have to surround yourself with an army.
Yeah.
And so there's that kind of laughter.
Mm-hmm.
There's sadness.
Yeah.
Fear. Every day that you go to work, you're a little bit afraid of what you're going to see. So, and I never thought I knew more than anyone else. I just was out there trying to take care of patients.
Yeah. Doing your best.
Yeah, just doing my best.
Yeah.
Day to day. So that's pre-COVID.
Mm-hmm.
A lot like ER.
I love it.
But, so.
Yeah, not as spicy.
Not as spicy. There's not as much romance. There's no time for romance.
Yeah.
So,
that's where Hollywood comes in.
That's where Hollywood. I'm waiting for that. I should do a podcast of the reality.
I love that. I love it.
You can call it Empty Closets.
Ooh,
right?
That's what is that? You own that now. You own that now.
Hashtag
Empty Closets. Empty Closets. I love it.
So then COVID came, and COVID was scary. When I first heard about COVID, I didn't think it was anything worse than influenza.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we've had really bad flu seasons.
Yeah.
When we lost thousands and thousands of people and no one batted an eye.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you started hearing some of the rumors about COVID, I didn't take it more seriously. I had no more concern than I had in flu seasons of the past.
Right. A really bad flu
Just a
season.
bad flu season.
Mm-hmm.
Get your flu shot.
Yeah.
Just do what you're supposed to do.
Right.
And then it became more and more of a reality. Mm-hmm. So upper management administration became more distressed about resources. So mm-hmm. resources became a vital component of everything that we did. Are we going to have enough resources? I worked at IU Health North. Okay. And we became a COVID hospital. And we were worried about, are we going to have enough ventilators? Are we going to have enough PPE for our staff? Mm-hmm. And so we took our pediatric ICU and our pediatric floor, and we took it out of that hospital because we were Riley North. Oh, yeah. And we moved all of our pediatrics down to Riley and converted all of their rooms mm-hmm. into negative airflow rooms. And if you drive by IU Health North, mm-hmm. you can see, if you see a hole in like a window, like scattered, those are makeshift COVID rooms. Wow. So there are probably 30 when you drive by and see them.
So what are the holes in the window for?
Negative airflow.
Got it. Okay.
So we were just makeshifting, trying to make it happen.
Yeah.
Make it work. And then there was so much fear about how we can safely take care of patients. Mm-hmm. And so you had to gown properly, and mm-hmm. you can only have so many people in the room. And then everything that we did about patient care changed. Mm-hmm. Like if someone coded, we didn't intubate them right away. They had to have return of pulse because every time we intubated one of those patients, we put everyone in the room at risk. And so you had to start prioritizing and being very careful about how you took care of patients. Mm-hmm. But it was stressful because you cared for those patients. People were afraid to have to be the ones to go into the room. Doctors were afraid to have to be the one to intubate patients. A lot of doctors opted out to not be in that situation because they felt too at risk. Yeah. And but when they came in the beginning of the disease, we didn't really know how to manage the disease. Mm-hmm. We knew that people got sick quickly, mm-hmm. and we intubated them very early on, mm-hmm. and then moved them to the ICU. And that's really what we did in the beginning. We would take sick patients, we would try to get them intubated into the ICU as soon as we could, mm-hmm. And so that's the beginning.
Yeah.
So, you had asked me a question before. I don't know if you want to ask me a question on how things changed in the evolution of COVID
Absolutely,
care.
yeah, and how it sort of affected not just you, but sort of the community of health workers that mm-hmm. you worked with, the ER mm-hmm. staff. Because I even know that, just the little bit I know about healthcare, that the ER is just a different sort of mm-hmm. life. Right. Like you have to be on different cylinders at all times right. than other floors. Right. And so how did that change? How did all of the evolution of COVID sort of change the evolution of your relationship? Because, you know, mm-hmm. you always had to be on, so you had that humor, right? That kept you all mm-hmm. strong and together. But then when this new thing comes on and everyone is probably, I mean, I'm assuming, correct me if I'm wrong, but at 10 all the time, like just making sure mm-hmm. that everything's okay. Like, what was how was the evolution of your relationship in that situation?
So I've always said I'm only as good as my nurses. Mm-hmm. My nurses are just my champions, mm-hmm. and they're amazing, and you work together as a team. Yeah. And so you have this really strong core of people that you trust and believe in, and they trust and believe in you. Yeah. And in the beginning, we just kind of were like a assembly line factory, and we weren't accountable for the actions that we did. We didn't have to see patients up on the floor. Mm-hmm. We weren't responsible of what we did in the emergency room, and then what ultimately happened on the floor. Mm-hmm. So as time progressed, we started to see some of the results of our actions of what we had done. Mm. So, you know, as we progressed through months of COVID, you realize that there's this whole population that were separated from their families. And what a terrible thing we did when we didn't realize that. Yeah. So like in nursing homes, they never saw their families for maybe 18 months. Mm-hmm. And you would have these people come in to your ER to intubate them and code them with COVID, because mm-hmm. we kind of just stuck a bunch of COVID nursing home people, they stay in the nursing home. Mm-hmm. And then you would talk to their families, and their families hadn't seen them for 15 months. Wow. And these people were dying alone. Mm-hmm. And like, we were responsible for that. Like, we were responsible for that. So
can you tell me a little bit more about that? How are you responsible for that?
Well, we were responsible for this whole generation of patients that we took them into the emergency room, mm-hmm. we intubated them, mm-hmm. we sent them to the ICU, and they were therefore isolated from their families to either pass on or to survive, but for months they were by themselves. Nursing homes, because we had an overwhelming need in the emergency department. We had limited resources. Mm-hmm. We tried to keep our nursing patients at nursing facilities unless they really needed to come into the hospital.
Because at the nursing home they were allowed to have a visitor.
They were not allowed.
They weren't even there.
No, they stopped having visitors, but we just didn't have the resources. Mm-hmm. So then when you would start to get those patients that had exceeded the care ability of their facilities, mm-hmm. and you would talk to families, they would say, I haven't seen this person in months. Mm. And that was really hard. And so my practice started to change. And so I realized that I had a responsibility not to just the patient, mm-hmm. the COVID patient, but I had a responsibility to the COVID family. Mm. And that when a patient came in, you know, we could intubate you right away, but I can put you on high flow right now, and I want you to get on the phone, and I want you to FaceTime, and I want you to tell every one of your family things that you want them to know before I take your voice away from you. So my practice changed really quickly. I had a patient that came in, and she had already passed away, but they were still doing CPR, and I called the family, and I said, where are you? are you close enough that you can come be with, I will bring you into the room and you can be with her, and as we stop resuscitative efforts. And I was able to do that and knew this family and saw her story on TV. Her daughter was a nurse at the hospital, and she became an ambassador for COVID vaccinations, and she said that her mom would have been eligible for the vaccine, and it was, you know, but that was the same family. I at least got some of her family to be there with her in the end. So my practice began to change a lot as I became more focused on the family and how to care for the family. And if this person was not going home, what was the legacy you were going to leave?
Yes, that is beautiful. That is incredible. And I am sure that that adjustment in your practice, which was, you know, just thinking a little harder about what the overall experience would be like, has changed lives, has made things different for people, and has affected their life in a way that has brought meaning to those last days of their loved one. So that is huge and amazing, and thank you so much for seeing the people, you know. And I'm sure at that time it may have been hard because there was a lot going on, you know, at the time, but to be able to take a pause and see the human being and the life that they had outside of the walls of that hospital is incredible and life-changing for that person and for their loved ones. So that's a huge deal. That's a huge deal. So thank you so much for that.
And that's really kind of, you know, how things transpired and evolved with Rodney when I found out that Rodney was sick. I was already at that point in my life where I realized that there was so much more to this, the battling of this terrible disease, and that it wasn't just my ability to intervene in that one moment in time in the emergency department. It takes, you know, 10 or 15 minutes to intubate someone and get them on a ventilator and get all of that stuff done. But that your responsibility to people you love and care goes beyond that. And so at one time we were really inundated with a lot of COVID patients, and the staff was really overworked, stressed. They had to wear the same PPE at one point. They were scared. I remember one of the nurses, her mask came down as she was suctioning a patient, and she came to the ER because she was hysterical that she was going to die as this result. She wanted to take care of patients, but she was terrified to do it. So there's so much stress. Patients were in a room, essentially in these, you know, the ICU, and getting great medical care, but they were alone. And usually in an ICU, you're surrounded by people who love you, and you tell the nurses how great this person is. And then the nurses become invested in that patient because they have a personal relationship. This did not happen. Every room was just a blank canvas with patients on ventilators, and
you didn't know their stories.
You didn't know their story, and you really were just getting in there, and you wanted to get right back out because you're terrified to be in
for
there.
yourself.
So these people were just on, you know, ventilators by themselves. And then, you know, Rodney came, and, you know, he's my man. And he began to not do well, and nobody was allowed visitors, but I was going to be his visitor. So I would gown up and I would take my stuff, my own personal stuff, and then I would tell his wife, what do you want to tell him? Do you have a prayer for him? Send me a prayer and I'll play that. I put my own personal phone in a Ziploc bag and would lay it next to his head, and she would pray over him. And so we would do that on a regular basis. And then I thought, this man is not doing well. He's going to probably die. And I reached out to Stacy and Holly and Kelly, and we had a drive-in conference in my driveway, and I said, I don't know if I believe in miracles, but if you want to show me one, like, my heart's open. And so we just decided we were going to do more. We were going to let the nurses, let the people, I wanted the nurses at IU Health North to know who they were taking care of. So I contacted all of his family and said, send me his pictures, every picture you have. And Holly went and got them put on cardboard. And then I said, I want his Flying Toasters music, I want his favorite jazz music, and Sheena, I want you to make a prayer CD. We took 3 CDs, and Holly brought a boombox. And I went to the charge nurse and I said, you need to know this man. He is a really good man, and we have to fight for him. And so we surrounded his room in these pictures, and I said to the nurses, just have the boom box going 24 hours a day. Just let him hear it. Just let him hear it. And then we decided.
I have goosebumps. Oh my goodness.
I wanted people to be held accountable and know who they were caring for. I wanted them to have a little bit of fight in it. And then I said, and this hospital needs to know who they're taking care of. So I went to Lowe's, we brought flags, I had everybody write their favorite passages on it and put it in the yard outside of his window. We found out where his window was, we put a heart on the window, and then we, organized that prayer vigil. It wrapped all the way around the hospital. And people prayed, and the nurses taking care of him in the ICU are standing looking from the window. People
in the room.
In the room, yeah. And then people are coming out, nurses are coming out and praying. And I just felt like we had such a responsibility to fight in a different way.
Yeah.
Not like, adjusting its ventilator.
Sure.
But in a different way.
Yeah.
And like human connection.
Yes.
And then the rest of the story.
Yes, that's
Easter day.
Easter morning, he came off the ventilator. I imagine that this act of making him a human and helping his body and his subconscious mind hear his wife, hear music, hear his loved ones on the outside of the building. All of those things were very integral and very important to his recovery and to his spirit. For his subconscious mind and his spirit to recognize those things and hear those things. And it could very well be one of the main reasons he is still on this planet today is because you decided to think outside of the box and do something that had not and was not really able to be done for the other patients that were there. And I think that it's also a huge testament to how human connectivity is so important even when we're healthy, but especially when we're not.
Right. And like I said, show me a miracle. But there was a feeling like the power of prayer. There was a feeling people really like that was their heart was out there.
Yeah.
And to have so many people really focused on one thing, and then lo and behold,
And I'm sure that this was obviously extremely beneficial for Rodney and Rodney's life and the loved ones around him. But I cannot imagine that this wasn't something that wasn't also a source of rejuvenation for the staff that got to participate.
Did you see when Rodney went home?
Yes.
It was a celebration
Yeah.
of every floor. He had to stop at every floor. It was such a celebration because, there were so many people that never were
able
to go out in that manner. And then just to actually see and feel and participate, and you felt like everyone had a part in it.
Yeah.
Everybody had a part in it.
Everyone was invested.
Yeah.
And this was something that everyone needed to see happen.
Right.
This person who was almost gone.
Yeah.
Like so many others who had been there. But you all worked together physically and spiritually to make it so that this person got to leave.
And in the darkest, I would say in the darkest, the worst moment in Rodney's, if you look at his vitals and where he was and his complications, And to see that when you're at the very bottom, that you shouldn't give up hope yet.
Yeah.
Because
as long as you're breathing.
Yeah.
Even if it's on a ventilator.
Right. Or, you know, he had every single complication. He'd had a stroke and a GI bleed, and his kidneys shut down, and he had respiratory failure and cardiac failure. He did everything in that hospital but die. And he came back to tell everyone about his journey.
Wow.
And so.
Wow. And that journey had a huge important part of it, and that was you.
Oh.
And thank you so much.
I have to tell you one little piece.
Yes.
Ironic.
Yeah.
So my mom passed away this January from COVID, 4 weeks before her vaccination.
Wow.
So it's still there.
Yeah.
We're still fighting.
You're still in it, right? It's still happening, and it's not something that we can say done.
Right.
You know,
we all have a responsibility.
Absolutely. Absolutely, to continue to not only help ourselves but to help our fellow humans. And hopefully, if anything has come out of this pandemic and all of the things that we've had to sacrifice as a human community, is that we belong to each other, and we have to take care of each other. And if that means staying apart from each other, or washing our hands, or wearing a mask, or getting vaccinated, whatever that is, we still have a duty to each other. And that duty that you had to your fellow human during the hardest hit part of this pandemic is beautiful and amazing. And I just want to thank you as a part of your human community. Thank you so much for that work that you did, but also because of my close relationship with Rodney, thank you so much for changing, just adjusting your practice to help everyone on a spiritual level too. That's important and incredible. Thank you so much for sharing your story here with us today. I don't even know what we would do without this story. This is so great. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you.
And being a part of the C19 Experience.
Thank you. I told you I'm a weeper.
I love it. Look, I'm over here too, like, oh my goodness, it's so good. No, it's perfect. Thank you.